The jungle was quiet, except for the soft rustle of tall, blue-leaved trees and the distant hum of strange flying insects. The crash had left a deep scar in the soft ground. Metal parts from the shuttle scattered in all directions. Smoke still drifted from the wreckage. But the fire had died hours ago. Lying near the broken remains of the research shuttle was Dr. Mason Clark, a human cynolinguist from Earth. His uniform was torn, and a deep cut ran along his left arm. His head ached, and his mouth was dry. He tried to sit up but fell back down with a groan. Still alive, he whispered to himself, though he wasn't sure for how long. His emergency beacon had broken in the crash. No communication, no medical kit, and he had no idea what kind of creatures lived on Virilia, the mysterious jungle planet. He was alone, or so he thought. From the shadows beyond the trees, someone was watching. She moved silently, her pale blue-purple skin blending with the forest shadows. Her large, silver eyes studied the human carefully. She had never seen one in person before. Stories told by her people painted humans as loud, dangerous, and selfish. But this one was different. He looked small, hurt, lost. Her name was Scifi. She was one of the Miralin, a hidden race believed to be extinct by most of the galaxy. Her people lived deep underground, away from outsiders. They never trusted humans, not after the war many years ago. But something about this man made her pause. She stepped closer, her bare feet making no sound on the mossy ground. Mason blinked as a shadow moved near him. His heart jumped. Was it an animal? A threat? But then he saw her, tall and graceful, with smooth, glowing skin and long white-silver hair. Her ears were small and slightly pointed, her features soft yet strange. She looked almost human, but not quite. "W, who are you?" Mason asked, his voice weak. She didn't speak right away. Instead, she knelt beside him and gently touched his arm. Her fingers were warm. She pulled out a small vine-wrapped pouch from her side and took out crushed leaves. She placed them on his wound. It stung, but then the pain began to fade. Mason watched her, confused and amazed. You're helping me?" he asked. She finally spoke, her voice soft and melodic. "You should not be here, human. This place is dangerous. For both of us." Mason struggled to sit up. "Then why are you helping me?" Scifi looked away for a moment, then answered, "Because I do not enjoy watching someone die when I can prevent it." Mason gave a tired smile. "Well, I'm grateful. My name's Mason. Mason Clark." "I am Scifi," she said. They looked at each other for a few seconds in silence. Then Scifi stood and motioned for him to follow. "You cannot stay here. Come." Slowly. With her help, Mason managed to stand. His legs were shaky and his head spun, but he followed her. She led him through the jungle, moving carefully between trees and vines. The deeper they went, the stranger the jungle became. The plants glowed faintly. The air smelled sweet and warm. Small creatures peeked out from behind trees, watching them pass. After a long walk, they reached a cliffside covered in vines. Scifi pushed aside some moss, revealing a narrow opening. She stepped inside, and Mason followed, ducking low. Inside was a glowing cavern. Crystals covered the walls and ceiling, lighting the space with soft blue and green colors. A pool of clear water sat in the middle. Strange plants grew along the walls. It was quiet, safe, and unlike anything Mason had seen before. "Welcome to my sanctuary," Scifi said. "No one will find you here." Mason sat near the pool, overwhelmed by everything. "This place, it's beautiful." Scifi nodded. "It is one of the last untouched places left on this planet." He looked up at her, still surprised. "Why are you doing this? You don't know me. You don't trust humans." She turned away, her face calm, but her voice sad. "That is true. But I also know pain. I know what it means to be left behind. You should not be punished for the mistakes of others. Mason lowered his head. Thank you. Salieri gave him a small nod, then walked to the side of the cavern and began preparing more healing herbs. As Mason sat in the glowing cave, watching this strange and gentle alien woman move silently through the space, he felt a strange warmth in his chest, not just from the herbs, but from something deeper. He didn't know it yet, but his meeting with Salieri was only the beginning of something that would change both their lives. Forever. Mason woke up to the soft sound of water dripping in the glowing cave. The pain in his arm had faded, and the air was warm and gentle around him. He sat up slowly and looked around. The strange crystals on the walls gave off a soft blue light, and the clear pool in the center reflected everything like a mirror. He noticed Salieri sitting quietly near a small fire, mixing herbs in a bowl. Her pale blue-purple skin shimmered slightly in the light. She looked peaceful, but also distant, like her thoughts were far away. "Good morning," Mason said, his voice a little rough. Salieri turned to him with a calm expression. "You rested well." "That is good." Mason nodded. "Better than I expected. That plant stuff you used, it worked like magic." "It is not magic," she replied. "It is knowledge. My people have studied healing for many years." Mason smiled. "Still feels like magic to me." He looked at her for a moment. "You really saved my life." Salieri didn't answer. Instead, she handed him a wooden bowl filled with warm broth made from jungle roots and herbs. It smelled strange, but not bad. Mason took a sip, and to his surprise, it tasted good. As he ate, he tried to understand the mystery of the woman in front of him. She wasn't like any alien he had studied or heard about. Her speech was calm and wise, but her eyes held something deeper, sadness, maybe even loneliness. "Salieri," Mason said after a moment, "how did you find me?" "I felt your shuttle fall from the sky," she said. "The impact shook the ground. I followed the smoke." "But why did you help me?" "Most people would have walked away." She was silent for a while. Then she spoke softly. "Because once, someone helped me when I was alone. I never got the chance to return that kindness, until now." Mason didn't know what to say. The way she spoke made him feel like there was a story behind her words, a deep one. "Are there others like you?" he asked gently. Salieri paused. Her fingers tightened around her bowl. "Not here. Not anymore." Mason didn't push. He could feel it was a painful topic. Instead, he looked around the cave again. "This place," he said. "It's like something out of a dream." Salieri stood and walked to the side of the cave. She touched one of the crystals lightly. "This is one of the last hidden places of my people," she said. "Long ago, we lived across this planet, but now, only a few sanctuaries remain. Most were destroyed or forgotten." "Because of humans?" Mason asked, unsure. "Partly," she replied. "But not only because of humans. My people feared outsiders. We chose to hide. In time, hiding turned into silence, and silence turned into disappearance." Mason listened carefully. Her words weren't angry. They were honest, maybe even tired. "I didn't come here to hurt anyone," he said. "I'm just a linguist. I study languages. I wanted to understand new cultures." Salieri turned and looked at him, her silver eyes watching him closely. "Then perhaps you will understand mine, if you listen." Mason's eyes lit up. You teach me." "I will show you what I can," she said, "but you must promise not to share it with anyone. This knowledge is sacred to my people." "I promise," Mason said quickly. "I won't tell anyone. Not a word." Salieri gave him a slight smile, small but real. They spent the rest of the day in the cave. Salieri showed him how the crystals responded to sound, how some plants glowed when touched, and how certain symbols carved into the walls could change the light's color. Mason was fascinated. Every detail was new, and yet it felt familiar, like he was stepping into a forgotten part of history. He took notes in his small journal, sketching symbols and writing what little he could understand. But more than the knowledge, it was Sailori's presence that kept him curious. She moved with grace and purpose. She spoke with care. And sometimes, when she thought he wasn't looking, she watched him with an expression he couldn't quite read. That night, Mason sat near the pool thinking. "Sailori," he said quietly, "do you ever get lonely here?" She sat down beside him, but didn't answer right away. The water reflected their faces, side by side. "Yes," she said finally, "but it is safer to be alone than to trust the wrong person." Mason nodded slowly. "I get that. But sometimes it's worth the risk." Their eyes met. For a moment, the cave was silent, except for the soft sound of water and the faint hum of the crystals. Neither of them knew it yet, but something had already begun to grow between them. Something neither science nor language could fully explain. Mason had spent 3 days inside Sailori's hidden sanctuary, but it felt like a place far outside of time. Each hour brought something new. He had never imagined that a place so quiet could hold so many secrets. Sailori was a careful teacher. She didn't speak much, but when she did, Mason listened closely. She showed him how to read the symbols carved into the stone walls. Each symbol had more than one meaning. Sometimes it depended on how it was drawn, or even what emotion was felt while carving it. "It's like your language is alive," Mason said one day. Sailori nodded. "Because we believe words carry energy. Thoughts have power. So we write not just to record, but to connect." Mason smiled. "That's beautiful. Humans don't always think that deeply." Sailori gave a soft chuckle, the first laugh Mason had heard from her. It was gentle, almost like wind passing through trees. As they continued exploring the inner parts of the cave, Mason noticed something unusual. Behind one of the crystal-covered walls was a narrow tunnel. It was almost hidden, like it wasn't meant to be found. Curious, Mason looked at Sailori. She paused. "That part of the sanctuary is older, forgotten. Can we go in?" he asked. She hesitated, then nodded slowly. "Yes, but stay close." The tunnel was tight, and the air inside felt different, cooler, heavier. After walking for a few minutes, they stepped into a dark chamber. Crystals here were dull and cracked. On the walls were carvings, hundreds of them. But unlike the peaceful ones in the main sanctuary, these were sharp, broken, and full of chaos. Mason moved closer and saw images of fire, falling ships, and beings that looked like Sailori. But they were running, hiding. Some were lying down as if they had fallen. This is a story," he said softly. "A painful one." Sailori stood still. Her face had changed. She looked distant again. "This is the memory of the last war," she said, "when our kind tried to speak with yours, but failed." Mason's voice lowered. "You were there." "I was young," she said, "too young to fight, but old enough to remember." She walked over to one carving, a symbol of 2 hands reaching toward each other, then breaking apart. "We offered peace," she said, "but fear was stronger than understanding. A mistake led to destruction, and after that, we hid." Mason looked at her with sadness. "I'm sorry." "You did not cause it," she replied, "but your kind forgot. And so we were erased from records, from maps, from memory." Mason stepped closer. "But you're still here. That means hope is still alive." She looked at him, and for the first time, her eyes showed a flicker of something warm, something more than caution. "Maybe," she said, "maybe not all humans are the same." They walked back to the main sanctuary in silence. Mason didn't speak, out of respect for what he had just learned. He understood now why Sailori had been distant, why she didn't trust easily. Her kindness wasn't weakness, it was courage. That night, Mason sat by the pool, writing in his small journal. He drew the symbol of the broken hands and then, beside it, he drew a new version. 2 hands reaching toward each other, touching. He heard footsteps behind him. Sailori sat down beside him. You draw your thoughts, she asked. Sometimes, Mason said. It helps me remember what matters. He showed her the new symbol he had made. She stared at it quietly, then reached out and traced it with her finger. That is a good thought, she said softly. He looked at her, trying to read the emotions in her calm face. I want to help fix what was broken, Mason said, even if it's just a little. Scifi turned to him. Then start by listening, and by staying alive. My people would not be pleased if they knew I was hiding the human. Mason gave a small grin. I'll try not to get caught. She gave him a look, half serious, half smiling. For a moment, it felt like the heavy past between them had become a bridge instead of a wall. As they sat together in the peaceful light of the crystals, something had changed. Not in words, not in grand actions, but in quiet understanding. And deep inside, in a place neither of them had yet spoken about, something new had begun to grow, soft, slow, and real. The days in the sanctuary felt endless in the best way. The warmth of the cave, the steady glow of the crystals, and the gentle hum of the planet's life outside all created a sense of calm. But despite this, Mason couldn't ignore the feeling that something was just out of reach, a sense of danger that hung in the air, almost invisible but always present. One evening, as Mason worked on some sketches of the plants in the cave, Scifi approached him, her face more serious than he had ever seen it before. We need to talk, she said, her voice quieter than usual. Mason set his journal aside. Of course. What's wrong? Scifi sat across from him, her eyes scanning the entrance to the sanctuary. Something is coming, she said. Something I did not expect. Mason frowned. What do you mean? Are we in danger? Scifi's eyes flickered with something unreadable. Yes, but it is not from the jungle. It is from my people. Mason stood, his pulse quickening. What do you mean? Why would they come here? I thought you said they had forgotten about humans. They did, Scifi said. But now they remember. They sense your presence here. They know I have been hiding you. Mason's heart dropped into his stomach. So they're coming for me. She didn't answer right away. Instead, she stood and moved toward the far wall, where a series of glowing crystals stood. With a quick motion, she pressed her hand to one of them. The crystal pulsed, and a holographic map appeared in the air, showing the location of several moving figures, her people or what was left of them. They're already on their way, Scifi said, her voice tight. They will be here within a few days, and if they find you, they will force me to choose between them and you. Mason took a step forward. But why can't we just leave? We can find another place to hide. Scifi shook her head. It's not that simple. If my people discover that I've broken the laws of my kind, I will be punished. Worse, they will take you and bring you back to the cities where humans are considered nothing more than trophies or enemies. Mason felt a chill run through him. The tension in the air seemed to grow heavier. I'm not going to be anyone's trophy, and I'm not going to leave you alone. Scifi turned to face him. Her eyes were darker now, like a storm gathering in the distance. I cannot ask you to stay. It is too dangerous for both of us. If they find us, we will both be destroyed. Mason's mind raced. He didn't want to leave her. He didn't want to be separated from this place, this strange, beautiful, quiet sanctuary where he had begun to understand her, and maybe even himself. But he knew she was right. If her people came, everything would change. I won't leave you, Mason said firmly, stepping closer to her. We'll find a way to stop this. There has to be another way. Scifi didn't speak at first. Instead, she walked to the center of the room and knelt by the pool, staring into the still water. She ran her fingers across the surface, creating ripples that reflected the soft light from the crystals above. Once, Scifi said softly, I thought I could run forever, but I have learned that running only leads to more pain. Mason knelt beside her, watching her fingers move across the water. You don't have to run anymore. I'm here, and I'll help you. Scifi looked at him then, and for a moment, There was a flicker of something new in her eyes, a kind of vulnerability that she had hidden until now. "And if they don't listen to us, what will happen to you, Mason? What will happen to us?" Mason didn't know how to answer. The thought of her people finding them, of her being forced to choose between him and her kind, made his chest tighten. The stakes had never been so high. "I don't know what will happen," he said finally, "but I know we'll face it together." There was a long silence between them, one that stretched long enough for Mason to feel the weight of the unknown pressing in. He could see how torn Scifi was, how deeply this conflict affected her. He could see that she was more than just a guardian of this sanctuary. She was a woman with a past she couldn't escape, with a duty she couldn't ignore. But despite everything, Mason still believed there had to be a way to stop the coming danger. "We can make a stand," he said, his voice gaining strength. "I'm not going to run. I'll fight for you, Scifi. For us." For the first time, a small smile touched Salieri's lips. "You are brave, Mason Clark, but this is not your fight." "I'm not just a human," Mason replied, his eyes steady. "I'm someone who will never turn his back on someone who has helped him. You've already shown me kindness. I'll show you the same." Salieri studied him for a moment, then nodded slowly. "I see. You are more than I thought, human." The air between them shifted. It was subtle, but it was there, a quiet understanding. Whatever was coming, Mason knew he wasn't ready to face it alone. And for the first time, he didn't have to. The day after Salieri's warning, the atmosphere in the sanctuary had shifted. There was a quiet tension between Mason and Salieri, a weight that neither could ignore. The map from the crystal had shown movement. Her people, the Miralin, were heading in their direction. They would arrive soon. Mason spent most of the day preparing, checking his emergency gear and trying to keep his mind focused. But despite the fear and uncertainty, one thought kept returning to him, clearer than ever. He wasn't going to leave Salieri, no matter what. He found her sitting by the pool in the evening, her back turned to him. The water in front of her rippled gently, reflecting the soft light from the crystals above. "Salieri," Mason said quietly, stepping closer. "We need to talk." She didn't turn around but nodded. "I know." Mason took a deep breath. "I'm not afraid of what's coming. I'm not afraid of your people or of whatever they might do to me. But what I'm afraid of is losing you." At those words, Salieri finally turned to face him. Her silver eyes met his, a hint of something deep and unspoken in their depths. Her expression was unreadable. "I don't want to leave you," Mason continued, his voice a little shakier now. "You've shown me so much. You've helped me when no one else would have. I can't just walk away." Salieri didn't speak for a moment. She studied him closely, her gaze intense, as if she were searching for the truth in his words. Then, in a soft voice, she spoke. "I never wanted to feel this way," she said. "I thought I had learned to keep my distance, to stay hidden from everything and everyone. I believed that love was a weakness, something that would only bring harm." Mason's heart pounded as he listened, his eyes locked on hers. He felt as though he had been waiting for this moment, for this confession, even though he hadn't known it until now. "But when you arrived," Salieri continued, "when I found you here, hurt and alone, something inside me changed. You don't understand, Mason. My people have been hiding from the galaxy for so long. We were hunted, driven into silence. But with you, I feel something different, something I cannot explain." Mason stepped closer, his voice almost a whisper. "Salieri, are you saying that you—" She took a breath, her hands trembling slightly. "I never meant for it to happen. I never wanted to feel this way. But I think I have fallen in love with you, Mason, and it terrifies me." Her words hung in the air between them, as though the weight of them had stopped time. For a long moment, neither of them spoke. The only sound was the gentle lapping of the water against the edge of the pool. Mason's chest tightened as he processed what she had just said. He had expected this moment to feel overwhelming, to feel like the world had shifted beneath him. But instead, he felt a strange peace settle over him. "Say, Larry," he said, his voice soft but firm. "I'm not afraid of you or of what you feel. I care about you too. I didn't want to admit it at first, but now I know. I can't just walk away either. Not from you." For a long time, Larry said nothing. She just stared at him, her eyes searching his face for some hint of truth. Then, very slowly, she reached out and took his hand. Her touch was light, almost tentative. "I don't know what this means for us," she said, her voice barely above a whisper. "I don't know if we can ever be free from the past, from the fear of what's coming. But I do know that I don't want to face it alone." Mason squeezed her hand gently. "You don't have to. I'm with you, Larry. We'll face it together. We'll find a way to survive this, no matter what happens." Larry nodded, the faintest of smiles tugging at her lips. "I hope so, human. I truly hope so." The silence between them was comfortable now, filled with something new, something neither of them had expected, but both were beginning to accept. The bond between them had grown in ways neither could have anticipated, but now it felt natural, as if it had always been there, waiting for the right moment to reveal itself. Mason sat down beside her, his hand still resting in hers. The two of them sat in silence, watching the stars outside the cave. The distant glow of Larry's home planet shone brightly through the cave's opening, casting long shadows across the ground. They didn't speak for a long time, each of them lost in their own thoughts. But despite the looming danger, despite the uncertainty that lay ahead, Mason felt a quiet resolve settle inside him. He didn't know what the future held for him and Larry, but one thing was certain: he would not leave her. He had come to this strange, beautiful world to find something new, something different, and now he had found it. He had found her, and nothing was going to take that away. The night was quiet, but the peace felt fragile. Mason sat up in his makeshift bed on the cave floor, unable to sleep. The soft hum of distant machinery in the air was constant now, like a warning, a presence they couldn't escape. Even in this hidden sanctuary, they weren't safe. Larry had been more distant than usual, moving quietly, her eyes constantly scanning the shadows. It was clear that whatever her people planned, it was coming closer. He could feel it in the air. Tension was thick, and every moment brought them closer to a confrontation they couldn't avoid. The sun had set hours ago, and the soft light from the crystal walls of the sanctuary gave the cavern an almost surreal glow. But as Mason watched Larry, who sat near the cave's entrance, looking out over the jungle below, he couldn't shake the feeling that this moment of calm would be their last. "You haven't spoken much today," he said quietly, stepping closer to her. Larry turned to him slowly, her eyes filled with a quiet sadness. "They're coming," she said softly. "I can feel them, the energy they carry. They are near." Mason felt a chill run down his spine. "What do we do? We can't stay here. We'll be trapped." "We will not be trapped," Larry said firmly, standing up. "I have made arrangements." Mason's heart skipped. Arrangements. Larry walked over to a small alcove in the cave where a large map had been drawn on the wall. The symbols were ancient, the lines and markings strange to Mason's eyes. But there was one point on the map she seemed focused on. "This is the path we must take," she said, tracing a line with her finger. "It leads to the old outpost I mentioned. It's far from here, in the mountains beyond the forest. We must move now." Mason didn't hesitate. He nodded, determined. "Let's go." Larry paused before moving to gather their supplies. Her hand lingered on a small device on her belt. "I will block their senses for as long as I can," she said, "but it will not last forever." They began their journey just before dawn, moving quietly through the dense forest. Larry led the way, her movements graceful and quick. Mason followed closely, his mind racing with questions, with thoughts of the danger ahead. The jungle, which had felt peaceful in the days before, now seemed full of shadows. Every rustling leaf made Mason jump. Every snap of a twig underfoot felt like it echoed across the forest. The quiet was no longer calming. It was ominous. "I'll do whatever I can to help," Mason said as they moved deeper into the jungle. "I'm not going to run. I'm with you." Scifi glanced at him briefly, her expression unreadable. "I know you are, Mason, but it is not just the enemy you must fear. It is what happens when you defy my people." They walked for hours, moving swiftly and carefully. Scifi seemed to know every twist and turn of the forest. But Mason could see the strain on her face. Her powers were weakening. She was focusing all her energy on keeping them hidden. Suddenly, a faint sound reached Mason's ears, distant but unmistakable. The hum of machinery, the sound of engines. "They're here," Mason said urgently, his voice rising. "We can't outrun them forever." "We must try," Scifi said, her voice cold, but there was a hint of fear in it too. "We cannot." "You're right," she said quietly. "We have no future unless we make one, but I need you to understand something. This will be our choice. If we leave this path, there is no turning back. We will both be hunted, and I may never be able to return to my people." Mason nodded, determination burning in his chest. "I'm ready. We're in this together, no matter what." Scifi seemed to hesitate for just a moment longer before a flicker of hope appeared in her eyes. She stepped forward, wrapping her arms around him. For a second, everything seemed to stand still. The wind, the chase, even the distant sound of engines. Until all that mattered was this moment. "I never thought I could feel this way again," Scifi whispered into his ear. "I thought I was too broken. But you make me believe in something better." Mason held her tightly. "And you make me believe in a future I never thought possible." As they pulled away from each other, Scifi glanced toward the distant mountains, where the outpost waited, and then back at Mason. "We'll go together," she said, a quiet resolve in her voice. "We'll face whatever comes next. Together." With that, they began the final leg of their journey. The sounds of pursuit grew louder, but Scifi moved with renewed strength. They passed through the narrow path and into a clearing where the old outpost came into view. The crumbling stone walls seemed to watch them as they approached. "There it is," Scifi said, her voice full of awe. "It's old, but it's safe, for now." Mason could see the determination in her eyes. He knew what she was about to do. This was their last stand, the moment where they would either survive together or be torn apart by forces beyond their control. As they approached the gates of the outpost, the ground shook beneath them. The Miralin had arrived. "Go," Scifi urged, pushing Mason toward the entrance. "Inside. Quickly." They ran into the outpost, the door closing behind them with a heavy thud. Inside, the walls were covered with ancient markings, symbols that seemed to pulse with power. "We're safe," Scifi said, though her voice carried the weight of uncertainty. "For now." Mason turned to her, his heart heavy with the knowledge of what had just happened. They had chosen this path together. It was dangerous. It was uncertain. But it was theirs. They had chosen each other.